Hi guys, my name's Raz and today we'll be looking at cumulative frequency. So let me just pull up the slides. We'll be looking at how to construct a cumulative frequency table and then draw the graph, and then how we can use the graph to construct a box and whisker diagram. So let's get cracking. So my first example the main example for today's lesson involves test scores. So I'm going to use test scores to highlight how we would draw a graph. So in this example, we have 200 students, and they sit a test and they record a score out of 80. So imagine I, as a teacher, I walk around and I go to everyone, hey, what did you get on the test? And I record the following. So 8 people got between 0 and 10, which isn't too good, all the way up to 7 people getting between 70 to 80. So just take this point to just highlight that the frequency tells us the number of people who achieved the score. Yeah, that just means the number of people. So 8 scored between 0 and 10, 26 between 10 and 20, and so on, up to 16 got between 60 and 70, and 7 between 70 and 80. Yeah, so a cumulative frequency graph is just a way for us to see and evaluate how the class did. Yeah, so my bosses were about to evaluate me as a teacher, and I'd be able to evaluate the group and see how I've taught them. So what is handy is if we put this into a cumulative frequency graph. So before we do that, let me just highlight what this means. Yeah, so this bit here just means how many people scored 10 marks or less. Yeah, how many people scored 20 marks or less? How many people scored 30 marks or less, and so on. And it's that concept that we'll be using in the graph for the cumulative frequency. So we can see that 8 people scored 10 or less marks. Yeah, or less than 10 marks, sorry. How many scored less than 20, bearing in mind 8 scored from 0 to 10 and 26 scored from 10 to 20? That's it, well done. Yeah, we have to add the two numbers together. So 8 plus 26 is 34. So how many scored less than 30? Exactly. Yeah, we have to add the next value of 32. So we keep doing that to generate the cumulative frequency. Yes, so next time we add what we add, 37 onto 111, which will give us 148. And then we add the 29. And because there were 200 students in the survey, the final cumulative frequency should be 200 if we've added correctly. Yeah, which it is. Yeah. So the problem with this is that we've lost in the surveying process the exact marks. So I know the highest score would be 80 and the lowest score would be 0. Yeah. So the highest and lowest scores from this data are now 80 and 0. But though we've lost the individuality of everyone's data, we can analyze the group as a whole. So we're going to use that to draw the table on the right. We will use to draw the cumulative frequency graph. So first thing to remember is the cumulative frequency always goes on the y-axis. Yeah, so the cumulative frequency goes on the y-axis, as we can see, and the variable, which is the test score, will go on the x-axis. And because our lowest score was 0 and our highest was 80, we label it from 0 to 80. And because there were 200 people, we label cumulative frequency up to 200. What we then do is we plot these points, yeah, which was the upper class boundary of the original table. Yeah, so we use 10 against 8. We plot 34 and 20. We plot 66 against 30, 111 goes with 40, 148 and 50, 177 and 60, 193 and 70, and 280. Yes, so those are the points that we cross. Imagine I was like doing with a pencil. Obviously, it's a bit neater on this PowerPoint. And we then join it with a smooth curve. Yeah, we don't do a jiggly-jagged edge. We do a smooth curve like so. So that's always going to score us marks in an exam, yeah? Between 3 and 5 marks up to this point. And the final bit is interpreting it, interpreting the graph. So having drawn the cumulative frequency graph, we can now use this to find the lower quartile, upper quartile, interquartile range, and the median. Yep, so what we have is the median will be the middle person. So bear in mind, we have 200 pieces of data. The 100th person will be the median. So that is about 37, I think. 37 or 38. Let's see what I've got. 37. Next, we want the lower quartile. Well, if there's 200 people, what's a quarter of 200? Exactly. Well done. 50. So we're going to draw from the graph on the cumulative frequency from 50, and we hit the line, and that will tell us the score of the 50th person, which is, what's that, about 26 or 25 we're going with there. And then we've got the upper quartile. So what is a quarter from the top? Which person will be a quarter from the top? If a quarter is 50, 200 take away 50 is, well done, 150. So you go to 150 on the graph, and we draw across with a ruler if you're doing it on paper, and down, and we get to, hopefully we'll say 51. Yes. And so we've used the graph there to find the lower quartile, the median, and the upper quartile. So these values match to their respective lines. So from that, we can find the interquartile range. The interquartile range is simply the gap between here to here. So it's the gap between the upper quartile and the lower quartile. So we'll get 51 take away 25, which is, well done, 26. So that is how we would draw a cumulative frequency graph. Yes, so the main things to realise are, let me get a little cheeky little whiteboard here. The main things to realise are what goes on the y-axis? Exactly, cumulative frequency. Which values on the intervals do we use to plot the graph? Exactly, the upper boundary values. So upper boundary values are used to plot the graph. And we join the points with a smooth curve. Join points with a smooth curve. So that is cumulative frequency graphs, and I'm going to extend that onto box and whisker diagrams. So what we can notice here is I can draw an axis directly below, which I will use these values and the highest and lowest values as well to draw my box and whisker diagram. Well, the highest value I said earlier was 80, and the lowest we're going to take as 0. So all I will do to draw the box and whisker diagram is just lines like this. So I'm going to do the same for these 3 values. I'm going to have one at 37, one at 25, one at 51. That's that. That is a box and whisker diagram for the data that we just got from this set of test scores from 200 students. Now, I guess what you're thinking. You're thinking, that's great. Thank you for helping me. But what is the point in this? At this point, you might have a point. The main use of a box and whisker diagram is for comparison. Yes, if we say this is class A, that's class A, and we compare it to the results of class B. Yeah, so in class B, let's say the median is, I don't know, 40, the lower quartile, 35, the upper quartile, 45, highest, 70, lowest, let's go 30. So if I plot this box and whisker diagram directly above it, we can compare. So I'm going to have something at 30. I'm going to have a point at 35, a point at 40, and a point at 45, and another one at 70. Yeah? Now we can compare these. So if this is class B and this is class A, we could ask the simple question, who did better? And it's not a straightforward answer, is it? If we look at these 2 box and whisker diagrams, we could say, well, if you're a smart student, if you're a good student rather, you'd probably rather be in set class A, because this represents 25% of the class. This represents 25% of the class. And the middle box is 50%. So the top 25% are obviously better in class A, yeah? So maybe if you're a good student, you're up in class A. But if we look at this 50%, yeah, we can see the middle 50 of the 50% here probably do a little bit better, but the tail of this class is a lot closer. So the bottom 25% in class B do a lot better than the bottom 25% in class A. So probably if you're a weaker student, you'd rather be in class B. Yeah, so that is the purpose of a box plot. Now, which is for comparison. So now if I just make a slight alteration and maybe just put a line here like this, so then that changes my values here. So now I've got the lower quartile is 40, and the median is still about 45, but the upper quartile is 55. Now, the same thing stands. You'd probably, if you're a top student, you'd probably prefer to be in class A, but anyone else would be better off in class B. Yeah, we can see the middle person does better. Even the lower quartile person in class B does better than the middle person in class A. So the teacher of class A is probably doing a good job of stretching the top of the class, but is losing the bottom. So you've probably all been in lessons where you felt like, oh no, I don't quite understand. What the teacher in class B is doing is really making sure everyone moves forward, though a handful of students at the top are probably going to be a little bit bored. Yeah? But overall, if you had to answer the question of who did better, we would say B, comparing these two graphs. Yeah. So that is us complete. So that is box plots. We can do a box and whisker diagram from a cumulative frequency graph, and you've seen how to draw a cumulative frequency graph. I hope you enjoyed the lesson. See you later.